Tell me what could I do? Maybe I don't understand what I'm trying to say, but I just wanna say what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying
This is Andrew Paul Cronin, and you're listening to the Q&A with A.P.C, the show that features conversations with artists, cultural figures, policymakers, performers, and other innovators living in Virginia. Episode 10, Soup. Soup is a hip-hop producer and DJ living in Norfolk, Virginia. On Valentine's Day, Soup released a 24-song instrumental hip-hop album called Left Unspoken. The cassette tape, which had a limited run of 100 and sold out one day after its release, explores the feelings we never expressed and the thoughts we didn't get a chance to say until it was too late. This song, Trying to Say, is from the album, which can be downloaded at soupoverhere.bandcamp.com. This episode of the Q&A with A.P.C was recorded at Soup's apartment and begins with a discussion about his car. How'd you decide on Nissan?
The price was right. It looked pretty good. It had everything I needed.
How do you feel about that name Rogue? X-Men.
How do I feel about the name Rogue?
Do you think X-Men every time?
I'm not a huge X-Men fan, so that didn't come to mind right away.
Has it come to mind?
I didn't really think about the name at all, to be honest with you.
I was using your bathroom a little bit ago, and I saw two things real quick. None of them are bad. The bathroom's very clean. But the flusher kind of tripped me out because I wanted to push down. It's on the top, and you have to pull up, which had a nice kind of feel to the flush once I got the hang of it.
It messes a lot of people up, for sure. And there's been plenty of times that people come out of the bathroom, and they'll just let me know. They'll tell me, hey, like, I almost didn't flush and was going to come out and have you show me how to do it. So
right,
you shouldn't feel bad if you didn't know how to use it right away.
No, I don't feel too bad. The second thing was you have a Sonicare toothbrush, and I love my Sonicare toothbrush.
I don't understand how people don't have Sonicare toothbrush, to be honest. I think it's one of those things, once you use it, it's like brushing with anything else just doesn't feel like you cleaned your mouth.
Could you imagine how awesome it would be if Philips Sonicare sponsored the podcast?
That would be great. Yeah.
That would be an amazing sponsor.
If you had free brush heads for the rest of your life or something.
Because those things are expensive.
Yeah. No, they're very expensive.
They're like the Gillette razor blades. You were born in 1986 in Fairfax County.
Yes.
Is that true?
Correct. That is true. That's true.
What was life like in the 90s and the 2000s or the aughts for you? What were you up to?
I had a lot of cousins growing up, and we would always just be hanging out after school together. We went to school in the same district of sorts, but then after school, we would all go to my grandma's house and kind of like wreak havoc on her house. So I feel like a lot of time when I was 10 was probably spent with my cousins, running around, playing out in the neighborhood.
A lot of outside.
Yeah, a lot of outside stuff. We
Yeah.
were always running around outside.
Who was your crew in high school?
My crew in high school. I was really fortunate to grow up in an incredibly diverse area. And sometimes I don't realize how diverse of a place I got to grow up until I talk to other people and hear about their situations growing up. But I wouldn't say I had a crew. I had multiple crews that I would hang out with. There was the sports playing kids that I would hang out with just because I also played sports. There was the hip hop head crew that I hung out with, who we would always just be in the hallways. Someone was like beatboxing, somebody was rapping, somebody was banging on a locker to make a beat or
Mm-hmm.
something. Um,
Which of those would you be doing?
I would be banging on something. I
Okay.
don't rap and I can't beatbox, so I would always be trying to make some kind of percussive something or other with whatever I had with me, whether that be a book or a locker or
What would be a Friday, Saturday night for you in high school?
oh, what would I do? Um, well, my parents aren't listening, so I would say I was definitely a huge stoner in high school. Probably was smoking weed every Friday night
Right.
in high school.
Speaking of your parents, they're Vietnamese from Vietnam.
Right, correct.
What was their, when did they come to America? What was their story for that in brief?
Their story, in brief, well, they came over to the States, I think, in the way a lot of people read about in history books or see in documentaries. So they actually got on a boat in the middle of the night and had to flee the country. So they had to pack into a boat that maybe was no bigger than the size of the room we're sitting in right now, with shoulder to shoulder, pack the boat with probably 60 people. They took that boat to the Philippines, and from the Philippines, they flew over to Virginia.
How long of a boat ride is it from Vietnam to the Philippines?
Many, many hours. I don't know the exact specific times because I never even thought to ask exactly how many hours it was. All I know is it was a long time.
Several.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All I know, it took a while and it was very uncomfortable. Whenever my parents do recount the story, they'll just say it was long.
Was that sort of a, did they have to pay to be on the boat? Was it, how did they gain entrance to be on the boat to begin with?
They didn't have to pay, but it was definitely something where a lot of organizing happened. Being able to talk with people within your community who you knew also wanted to flee the country, had resources to a boat, and knew how to navigate that boat to the right place in the Philippines where they needed to go.
Is this pre-Vietnam or post or mid?
Post,
Post.
post. So my parents didn't come to the States until 1980, 1981. But my mom's side of the family, everybody in her, all of her siblings and her mom fled the country in the 70s. And they, for the most part, as far as her siblings are concerned, grew up in the United States. She hung back because she didn't want to leave her dad, because none of her siblings stayed back with her father. And she felt bad about leaving her father behind. And it just got to a point after she stayed for so long that she decided, I don't want to be here. I want to be with the rest of my family.
Right.
Like, it was obvious her dad wasn't going to come over to the States and he had no interest in doing that. And he was kind of moving on with his life. So she decided she needed to move on with her life too.
Does your mom cut hair?
She does cut hair.
That's
Yes.
her profession.
Yes.
Did she cut your hair?
She does cut my hair. She has cut my hair ever since I was a baby. So,
Has anyone
And
else
until
ever
now.
cut your hair?
yes.
Okay.
Well, yeah, whenever I need a haircut, I'll get a haircut.
You don't have to
From
drive
whoever.
up north to get a haircut.
No.
Does she get
don't.
pissed if you, would she prefer that no one else ever cut your hair? Does she get angry?
She would definitely prefer that. Yeah.
Yeah. Has she articulated that to you?
Yeah, she always jokes around about it. If
And-
she sees me with a haircut, she knows that she didn't cut. She will uh, poke fun at the technique of the haircut. and
That's
just-
sweet.
Yeah.
That's sweet, isn't it?
It is sweet. And I do think she gives me the best haircuts. I don't think I've gotten a comparable haircut from another person other than my mother. But at the same time, I've only paid for super cheap haircuts anytime I've gotten a haircut. So,
Well, that's a nice compliment. I think if she were to listen to this podcast, any damage that might have been done about the stoner bit in high school would probably be alleviated by that nice compliment about her quality haircuts.
yeah.
Does
Well, I
she-
would hope so. I would hope so. She might not forgive me. But I don't know.
What did your dad do?
My dad, now he does computer stuff that I don't understand. So he does security cybersecurity things.
You don't understand it because it's classified, or you don't understand it because it's too high tech?
I don't understand it because I'm not awesome with computers. For some reason, whatever he does, I just don't get it. But maybe it's because it's classified too and he doesn't explain it to me really properly.
Do
Because
you
he can't.
do you ask?
I have asked.
Like, is
I
he
just
Department of
sometimes-
Defense, like DOD, or is it
Yeah.
okay?
He works for the DOD, and oftentimes they'll fly him to like different countries to help set up certain infrastructure with computers.
Maybe
Somehow.
maybe he's a drone pilot.
I don't know. I
You thought about that?
I haven't thought about it because I don't think he would be capable of doing that. But I wouldn't have thought he was capable of doing whatever computer cybersecurity things he does either. So
Does your mom cut his hair?
she does.
Yeah.
She does.
That's awesome. Did she cut your friend's hair in high school? And like, how did that? How did that work? Was it a place where you could hang in high school?
I don't know about if I would say I would hang in high school. She did cut a couple of my friends' hair in high school, which she always enjoyed because she liked seeing the people that I hung out with. When I was growing up until I was about 8 or 9 years old, though, I would spend most of my days after school in her salon because we just didn't have the means to transport me to my grandma's house or to pay for daycare or anything like that. So I would just hang out in the salon all the time. So I have spent probably thousands of hours inside of a salon.
Have you ever tried to cut hair?
Never. It's too scary for me. Hair takes a long time to grow back. You don't want to. Yeah, I would just feel way too guilty if I messed up. So I haven't tried it before.
She still cuts hair in Northern Virginia now?
She does.
What's the name of the shop?
Holly's Hair Salon. Her name is Holly.
Her name is Holly.
Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome. She's got her own place.
Mm-hmm.
HOLLY?
HOLLY.
Nice. You've been to Vietnam. You've traveled there twice.
I have, yes.
When you were in Vietnam, did you feel wholly American, or did a part of you feel Vietnamese?
Well, both. I mean, I definitely felt American, and you're constantly reminded of the fact that you are an American because people can spot it immediately. Like just by the way you dress, the way you walk, folks knew I was American right off the bat. Anywhere I went, it was just.
Would they say that out loud?
They didn't say it directly, but they would say it in the way that they treated you. They're trying to they would, in the sense that they would try to explain every little thing about the city.
Okay.
Like obviously like you've never been there before. You don't know what you're doing, and let me show you where everything is. Let me show you where you should go. Oftentimes they would be trying to lure you. Oh, lure isn't the right word, but trying to get you to go to their restaurant or like get your business because they knew you were an American and you probably had some money to spend.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the craziest experiences I had, which really made me feel like, okay, wow, people can spot that I'm an American from a mile away, was maybe it was the fact that I was in a car. But I remember riding in the backseat of a car, and every time the car stopped, someone was literally trying to open the door and pull me into a restaurant to eat at.
Wow.
That restaurant.
Because it's a lot of mopeds and motorcycles.
It's a lot of mopeds and motorcycles, and it probably had more to do with the car than the fact that maybe I looked like I was out of place. But I do remember when that was happening, just being like, wow, like they must be able to tell that I'm an American from far away. And once I opened my mouth to speak some Vietnamese, they could definitely tell I wasn't from Vietnam.
What were the situations where you felt Vietnamese in Vietnam?
When I got to be with my family, when it was like us and there was no pressure of going to do anything or find something new or see a site or anything like that.
The downtime.
The downtime was when I really, really felt connected. And whenever I got to be around my dad's side of the family, I felt like, oh, wow, okay, this is my family. This is where they live. And that made me feel very much so connected to my culture. Seeing where my parents grew up made me feel super connected to the culture. I heard a lot of stories about where they grew up, but they didn't have a ton of pictures or anything like that to show me. They had a few pictures where it was group photos in the house or something, and that gives you a little bit of a clue as to the way they were living. But until you see it in its totality, you get to see the community, how people treat each other in the community, what the sidewalk looks like, what the sun looks like coming up over a tree in their neighborhood. You don't get to really know what it's like there.
How old were you when you went there the first time?
Um,
I guess my question is, were there things that you made sure that you saw or did or said when you went the second time that you thought about, like in the time between the first visit and the second visit? Was there something that you told yourself, or
yeah.
several things where you're
Mhm.
like, I this time I have to make sure that I do this or see this or say this?
Yeah, one big thing was to see my mother's father. So my mom really didn't want to see her father. She was really scared. She knew she was going to be really emotional if it happened. And then I was just like, we got to do it. Like, I'm not, I mean, I'm in Vietnam. We're probably a mile away from wherever your father lives now.
How old
Like,
were you, or how many years ago was this?
this was when I was 20 years old.
Okay.
That was the last time I went.
All right.
I'd like to go again soon, but it's
But-
been almost 10 years.
Well, you were an
since I've
adult.
gone.
You were-
Yeah, I was an adult, and
Yeah.
I was just like, we're here. I know it's going to be really emotional for you, but I want to be able to make a connection with this person. I was, there's a lot of things, emotions going on for me too. I was never super a big fan of my mother's father because I thought he treated her very poorly. To get the whole picture, my mom sent her father money every month in the mail.
Like when you were growing up.
When I was growing up, all the way until the day that he died, she sent him money in the mail every month. And he would never as much as call to say thank you. And he would never as much as write a letter to say, I really appreciate what you're doing.
Was it something she did voluntarily or something that he requested?
She did voluntarily.
Was some of it guilt on her part for coming to America?
I'm sure that was part of it.
Have you asked her that?
I didn't, just because I feel like,
But you still could.
yeah, and I still could, and I feel like I don't want to put that on her to have to think about it in that way,
Mhm.
because I'm sure she feels guilt. I don't want her to frame it as guilt
Right.
though, and you know, she's such an amazing person. I don't want to have her feeling that way about it.
So when you met him, what was he like?
Well, the way we found him was we had to ask around the neighborhood because she knew his address, but she didn't know where the street was or anything like that. So, and this was 10 years ago, so it was like pre smartphones or anything like that. So we literally were going around the neighborhood being like, oh, you know where this guy lives? And we had the address, and people pointed us to the right address. And we walked up, and I remember like looking in, and we saw him. He was just sitting in a chair in a living room, and he looked out, and he saw my mom, and he recognized her right away, even though they hadn't seen each other in maybe 30 years at that point.
Wow.
And they're both like just crying uncontrollably. And we just spent the day with him. We walked around the neighborhood, took him out to dinner, kind of just caught up. He asked a lot of just general questions about, you know, what do you like to do, and
Mm-hmm.
what are you going to school for,
Mhm.
and stuff like that. And kind of just got to talk to him about what, you know, find out what his favorite food was, or like what
All
he liked
that.
to drink, and, you
Yeah.
know, just like really simple stuff.
Why soul music?
It ties in with the fact that I grew up in a Vietnamese household. I didn't have access to a lot of American and English speaking music growing up for probably like the first, until I was in elementary school or going to preschool. The only music I ever heard was like my parents singing Vietnamese folk songs and lullabies to me and stuff like that. I remember the first American music I got was from a thrift store, and I had 3 different cassettes for the longest time. I had the Carpenters, Close to You, I had Fleetwood Mac, Rumors, and I had Billy Joel something or other. All I remember is the cassette had the song Uptown Girl on it.
Okay.
I don't remember what album that
Right.
was.
It's probably him on a street corner with his leg up against a brick wall.
Yeah, and he's like got his fist in his hand or something.
Yeah.
And he's got a really big ring and necklace, and his shirt's unbuttoned a little bit. But really played the crap out of the Carpenters and Fleetwood Mac, especially. Those two I loved.
Yeah.
The Billy Joel one, was okay. I liked it.
Yeah, well, that
good
Fleet-
enough. It was something that I had, so I would listen to it whenever I got tired of the other ones.
Well, Rumors is an amazing record. But you had the radio, right? I mean, you could listen to DC 101 or things like that.
Yeah, we had the radio, but a lot of times when I would be listening to music, I'd have to it would be on my Walkman or something. It wouldn't necessarily be in the house because once again, we're kids and we were outside all the time. So my favorite thing to do was just take my Walkman and go into the woods and just sit down and listen to music and run around. And,
Did you have one of the yellow sports Sony Walkman?
I had off-brand. I had off-brand everything growing up. I didn't have Sony. I didn't have Sony anything. In 1993, there was a band called Bonnie M that was gigantic in Vietnam. And Bonnie M was a disco group that had their heyday in the 70s. And people might recognize songs of theirs
They were American?
They were European. I think they were Swiss, actually. But they sang all their songs in English.
Okay.
And they were huge in Vietnam. I remember my parents got this DVD shipped over, or not DVD, a cassette shipped over from Vietnam, and it was Bonnie M performing in Vietnam. And I got super, super into Bonnie M. At that point, I just wanted lots of disco music to listen to. So I kind of sought out a lot of disco music. Over time, that became translated into a love of soul music. It definitely started with disco.
And then did soul music lead you to hip hop?
I would say more so disco and hip hop led to soul. So after a certain point, it's you start getting music from other people. People give you a cassette or something. And I remember listening to Gangstar's album, Hard to Earn, was I think the first hip hop album I ever heard. And I thought it was so, so cool. And Gangstar's probably still my favorite hip hop group. I love Gangstar. From that kind of moment on, I was a huge hip hop head. And by the time I got to high school, still really into hip hop music. I am not the type of person to want to rap. And I wanted to be involved in the culture in some way. And for me, the way to be involved was to make beats. And when I started studying the approaches to making beats, I learned that a lot of my favorite producers and a lot of the favorite albums that I listened to, they weren't writing that actual music. They weren't playing those instruments. They were finding jazz records and soul records and taking sounds from that to make their compositions. So that kind of was the beginning of me getting into soul music really hard, was finding out, all of these hip hop records are actually soul records. And then just kind of going from there and trying to find the records that were sampled just so I could figure out how my favorite producers did what they did.
Did you ever try to rap and write lyrics and you're just like, no, that shit isn't going to work?
Oh
Did you-
yeah.
And is that how you, was it trial and error or did you just never try?
Oh, I definitely tried. I definitely tried. I just knew right away I wasn't good. And I knew right away that it wasn't something I really enjoyed, because people who are rappers, they love it. They always want to have their pen to a piece of paper writing something. And that just wasn't me. I just didn't like it.
Is there something about soul music that makes it better than other musical genres to be sampled?
For me, I like soul music because of the instrumentation, one, and two, because it's really raw emotionally, which I think is really cool. And it allows you to capture certain things a little bit better and a little bit more, what's the right word? Precisely, in a sense.
Like the orchestration, the melodies and the lyrics, or the instrumentals?
It depends on what you're looking for in the music that you're making.
Because I could say rock and roll is charged with emotion, or people could say jazz is charged with emotion.
No, for sure.
But people don't. The majority of beats are not rock beats or jazz beats. They're soul based.
Well,
is that right?
I would say the majority of beats are I would say soul and jazz are soul, jazz, and funk are probably the main sources of hip hop music. I don't think that's necessarily because rock music isn't as good to sample or doesn't have qualities that you would want to in a sample, I would say that is more a product of where hip hop came from. So hip hop came from urban areas that were poor, and people were looking to make music, and the way that they sourced the music was from their parents and what was in their parents' collection. So what's going to be in an African American kid's parents' collection in the 70s is going to be soul music or it's going to be jazz.
Is sampling stealing?
I don't think sampling is stealing. And the reason why I think that is there's only so many notes that you can play. And there's only so many orders that you can play notes. And there's, in a sense, no true way to write music that's completely and absolutely original. Like after a certain point, even if you're strumming something on a guitar, you're playing certain chords.
Mm-hmm.
And there's certain chord progressions that sound right.
That's right.
And after a certain point, every chord progression has been played.
But isn't it different that if you are creating, even if the sound of the chord progression is similar to someone else's, if you are creating it yourself, isn't that different than using a recorded track of someone who has created that? I mean,
That's different, but to say that one amounts to stealing and the other one amounts
I'm not
to being
saying, I'm
creative.
asking. I'm not saying
Yeah,
this.
but that's what I guess that's where I would take issue with people saying it's stealing because
Do people say it's stealing?
yes, people do say it's stealing, and I feel like the courts say it's stealing sometimes.
Well, is it legal?
It is sometimes not legal.
And it's sometimes not legal because the original people who made the records don't
Yeah.
want people
Yeah,
using
because
it.
the people who made the original records don't want people using it, and typically the lawsuits arise when it's making money.
So the thinking, I guess the thinking is if I were to play on my guitar a chord progression that is similar to a ZZ Top chord progression,
Yeah.
I am creating that. The DJ's line of thinking, and tell me if I get it wrong, is since I am cutting it up, that may not be the phrase, but since I'm
Yeah, I mean,
mixing
that's
or
pretty
cutting
much,
it up,
yeah. Mhm.
that's me playing it in
And
my
it's-
own way.
In a sense, yes. I mean, I think there has to be a certain amount of transformation that happens when you're cutting something. Like, I'm not advocating for taking somebody's track, playing it, and then saying that you did it. But I think that when you are listening to something, you can tell if a transformation has been done, if there's been a value added, if there's been something original done to that recording to make it new.
What do you listen for on a record you're thinking of sampling?
Uh,
I mean, obviously it depends on what
Yeah,
the mood is.
It definitely just depends on the mood, and it's hard to pinpoint exactly what I'm looking for, but I know it when I hear it. Oftentimes, it depends on the purpose of what you're looking for as well. Most producers create their own drum kits, so oftentimes you'll be listening to a record just to find a kick that you want to use, and you'll record the kick in, or a snare you want to use, and you record the snare in. I like to record in what I call phrases, so 4 to 8 measure segments of sound that I feel like could be transformed to have a hip hop aesthetic,
Including lyrics or just a backbeat?
including lyrics. I would say more so than other producers I know, I love to use the lyrics too.
So you come home from work and you've had a shitty day at work. Do you put on some records and you create a beat based upon your emotions of the day?
Oftentimes, it will end up reflecting my emotions of the day because I'll choose to put on a record that matches my mood and how I'm feeling. But sometimes I'll go to the record store and I'll come home with a stack of 12 records, and they're not all going to match my mood, but I'm going to put them on because I can't wait to listen to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just play with whatever is in front of me.
So the process is an organic one in a sense that you will put on a record and then you will hear something, and based upon what you hear, then you will build from that. not necessarily that you're coming in with anger or
Right.
love or whatever.
Yeah. No, it's definite. I mean,
It's all
the
of
two
that.
kind of go hand in hand a little bit, but it's an organic process in the sense that I never sit down and say, I'm going to make a beat right now. I
Okay.
sit down and I say, I'm going to listen to music and see if I find anything that I want to work with.
So sort of the music inspires the emotion as opposed to you taking an emotion and placing it upon the music, or it is both.
It is both in the sense that, yeah, like I was saying before, typically when I'm going to put a record on, it's going to reflect the way I'm feeling or the mood that I'm in at that moment.
Is part of the challenge linking the past to the present using soul and funk records?
That's definitely part of what I want to do. I want people to listen to the beat and look up what the sample is and try to find it and reconnect with older music. In that way, I feel like a lot of producers are historians and curators of old music. A lot of us want other people to get into it too. We want people to discover this music that a lot of people have forgotten. I think that's definitely a conscious choice to be using soul records and to be sampling just off of vinyl because I want people to reconnect with the music in that way.
Have you tried sampling rock or jazz or blues or even show tunes?
I have, yeah. Not on this particular release, but when I first started sampling, definitely came across tons of show tune records because that's like what's available at the thrift shop. Sampled a lot of jazz music starting out.
Do you even need records though with the internet? Because you can't just get the song off the internet.
You can just get the song off the internet. I enjoy the whole process of going out
Digging.
going to a record store, looking through the records. I always bring my portable turntable with me and my headphones, and it's fun. It's like a treasure hunt.
What two soul albums would you recommend to someone who hasn't listened to soul?
Oh, okay. Think for a second.
You think?
Yeah, I'm gonna think hard. Oh, Curtis Mayfield Curtis is phenomenal, and that's definitely one of the soul records I would recommend to someone who's never listened to soul music before, because that actually might be my absolute favorite soul record. It encapsulates everything that I love about soul music. There's a political and a social message to it. The instrumentation is amazing. It's about community. He celebrates his family. He celebrates who he is. There's heartache in it. There's joy in it. You have a singer in Curtis Mayfield who's one of the iconic voices in soul. He has incredible range, which I think maybe isn't evident in a ton of soul singers. I'm sure, a lot of soul singers have range, but Curtis Mayfield could hit some notes that I'm sure a lot of soul singers couldn't hit.
So we're here. We're having the interview because you have Left Unspoken cassette coming out, which
Yeah.
is a 1960s 70s soul inspired instrumental hip hop album. There's a limited run of 100 cassettes.
Right.
So I have a lot of questions about the cassettes, but that's a pretty specific idea.
Yeah.
So are you referring to someone or something in particular with Left Unspoken?
I am. And the way I came up with just that overall theme was I was watching a documentary on Beethoven. And when he passed away, he left behind a ton of manuscripts and a ton of belongings. And when they were going through all of his things, they found that he had written several love letters that he never got to send off to somebody. So I thought the concept of the things that you never got to say was such a cool concept. And it went hand in hand with the aesthetic and the concepts behind just a lot of soul music is speaking from a point of view of regret or longing or anger or like wanting to tell somebody something. Like that comes up so much in soul music. I got to tell you this. There's these
Like
things
in a
that I gotta-
romantic way?
There's things that I have to say. Yeah, in a romantic way. I like the idea of the fact that the things that he didn't get to say were expressions of love to somebody.
Are there things in your life that you have neglected to say or wanted to say but did not say in a romantic way to someone that has inspired the cassette?
Yeah, in the sense that, well, I kind of live by the mantra that I really don't want to leave things out on the table. So the things that I've wanted to say in words, I've said, but I haven't said them in this mode of expression before.
But
And I
you,
thought that was important because that's one of the ways I express myself. It may not come through incredibly well in words. I might not be the most well-spoken person, but I thought it would be really a good exercise for me and just something I wanted to do in a sense to get off my chest to put it into music also.
are you able to lay it on the table using words when you're in a relationship?
Yes, yes. But sometimes, you don't think you say it the right way. Even if, it's not left unspoken, it's something you say. It may not be conveyed the way you truly wanted it to be conveyed, and you may have regret about that too.
So it does come out with a limited run of 100 cassette tapes. You can also get a digital download copy of it. Why a cassette?
Cassette, I chose because, well, I mean, we're about the same age, but when we were growing up, the thing to do for somebody who you were trying to maybe convey a message to was make them a mixtape and to use a cassette. So I wanted to kind of invoke that feeling again where you were getting something from someone that felt really personal. And I felt like doing it on a CD wouldn't have conjured up those feelings in a similar way.
Like the nostalgia for it.
Yeah, the nostalgia for it. So I think people getting the cassette and opening it, and then just seeing the cover too, like it automatically kind of puts you into a certain mindset as far as like what you're going to feel or what you're going to kind of think of when you're popping the cassette in.
The album art and the cassette was designed by Greg Steele of Harrington Comics, which you could hear Greg on episode 4 of this podcast if you're interested. When you say he designed the cassette, do you mean he designed the color? The color of the cassette is blue. I hope that's not a big spoiler.
The cassette?
That's online.
Yeah, he
chose blue?
He chose blue.
What color would Greg have chosen that you would not have liked? And whatever color that is, would you have told Greg that that's not the color you like?
Oh, I would have absolutely told him. If I didn't like the color he picked, I would have told him that I didn't like that color.
Was there like a dialogue in the making, like in the process of like before it went to pressing or to, I don't know if that's the term for a cassette. I don't even know where you get a cassette made.
Yeah, it is. The term is pressing, and there was a lot of dialogue between Greg and I about the cassette design. Every little detail, we bounced ideas back and forth from each other, and he was just awesome to work with, really easy to work with.
Yeah, Greg's the man.
And it came out great. I'm just super happy about the way it looks.
It also comes with a postage paid postcard to reach out to someone you would like to send a message to. First of all, I love the idea of the postage paid postcard because I think that's also very nostalgic and old school. And obviously, it's another way for the whole feeling and the emotion and the idea to come across.
Yeah, and it was kind of just, if you didn't want to think about it, it's almost like it's making you think about it. So you get the postcard, it has a stamp on it, and you really have no reason not to write somebody. Like I did all the work's done for you. The postcard is already picked out. There's already a stamp on it. All you gotta do is put someone's address and a message on it, and drop it in your mailbox.
How did you decide on the stamp design? Did you just get a stamp at the post office, or did you go like Jimi Hendrix or Harry Potter?
Well, for you, the postcard I'm giving you has got a Harry Potter
sick
stamp on it, just
That's
because
awesome.
I know you're into Harry Potter and I am too. I just put the stamp that I was able to get at the post office on the postcard, which is an American flag stamp. It's a pretty generic stamp.
Do you have a cassette player in the Nissan Rogue?
I do not have a cassette player in the Nissan Rogue, no. I do have a cassette player here in my apartment, but not in the Rogue.
Okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not
Like,
in the Rogue.
what if people don't have cassette players? They get to get the digital download.
Yeah, they can get the digital download.
I have some questions about the song titles. Did you create the song titles first and then you found songs with lyrics to match the titles you created?
I came up with the song titles after. Some of the song titles I created to make them work within the context of the album. I'm notoriously bad for not naming things that I make, so oftentimes when I save a song, when I'm done making it, it just is like a word and then numbers, like happy
Underscore 5.
Underscore 5. Or like song with strings number 15 or something.
One song is called July Jonesin.
Yeah.
What happened in July?
July Jonesin, that song to me is about hearkening back or like really wanting to recapture an old feeling. So you're jonesing for July, like something really cool happened in July and it's not July anymore. And you really want to recapture that feeling of July.
We had a lot of snow cones and flavor ice on the curb in Northern Virginia growing up in the summertime. So that would be my July Jonesin.
Yeah. So you're jonesing for a snow cone.
Yeah. What do you think of the current hip hop sound? Does it have a name?
I think a lot of people would, well, the most popular sound going out in hip hop right now is trap music. And trap music is definitely super polarizing.
TRAP?
TRAP. Trap music, in a sense, is kind of polarizing in the hip hop community right now. I kind of have an unpopular opinion about trap music, which is I think it's fine. I don't have a problem with trap music. It's different from a lot of hip hop music that people grew up with and are used to hearing, in the sense that
Describe what trap music sounds like, or what a beat would be, or like a typical like lyric content wise would be.
trap music is driven by more synthetic sound, more processed sounds, and the MCs in trap music. And I just hate generalizing. I really do. But I think there's this conception of trap music being very simple lyrically, in the sense that they're not talking about super complicated things. They're not using,
History or spitting knowledge or things like that.
yeah.
Well, like, so
It's something that when you hear it, you know it. You know it's trap music when you hear it. If you trace hip hop back, what was hip hop originally? It was party music. MCs would get on the mic to rock a party, and they weren't rapping about anything. They weren't spitting knowledge. They just kept the party going as best they could. And the first rap battles weren't super lyrical. It was who can get the crowd going the best. And a lot of times now too, I kind of liken the trap movement to the punk movement in rock, where I'm sure when the punk movement started, there were all these rock heads who were used to listening to more of that classic rock sound that were like, what the fuck are these guys doing? It's not true to the art form.
it's not super technical.
Yeah, it's not super technical. They're only playing two chords over and over again and screaming. And I think that's kind of the reaction of a lot of hip hop heads now to the trap music, where it's like, oh, the instrumentation isn't there. It's not super soulful. These guys are just rapping about
I think
trash.
you connecting it to the punk movement is a really smart and perfect way to describe it, and in a way, kind of makes me feel so much better about everything. Oddly,
Yeah, I don't know if I make that connection to make myself feel better about it, but I think it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
When I'm seeing it, because they're, from the way it sounds aesthetically to the way they do their shows and the way they just carry themselves, it's very punk rock. The way the trap artists are doing it.
I just have a few more random ones.
Sure, yeah.
What time
Anything
do
you want.
what time do you go to bed?
I go to bed usually between midnight and 1 o'clock.
What's the pre-bed ritual?
The pre-bed ritual is I take Fife out at the very last moment that I possibly can before
That's your
I know I'm
dog.
going to fall asleep. Yeah, I take my dog out as close to the point that I'm going to fall asleep as I possibly can.
That sounds horrible.
Because I don't know, I just feel bad about making him wait longer until the morning to have to go to the bathroom, and I don't want to have to wake up super early, so I just try to time it so that I'm taking him out as close to my bedtime as possible.
What's your favorite meal of the day?
Dinner, because I usually never rush dinner, and the other meals of the day I always feel like are a little bit rushed.
Do you bring your lunch to work?
Sometimes. Most of the time, I would say I do bring my lunch to work, but I probably order food twice a week.
Can you get food at your job other than a vending machine?
No. I mean, I'd have to bring it in. I'd have
Okay.
to bring it in.
Have you played DJ Hero, the video game?
I've never played DJ Hero the game. No.
Okay. Well, that question sucked then. um, you know about it though, right?
I do know about it.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
What's the proper way to pronounce pho, the soup?
Oh, pho,
Pho.
pho,
Most people say what?
pho. Most people say pho.
And what does pho mean in Vietnamese?
I don't even know what pho means in Vietnamese. To be
Oh,
honest with
see,
you.
I heard that pho means shit in Vietnamese. Or is that shit?
I've never heard the word pho mean shit in Vietnamese.
What is shit in Vietnamese?
Cook?
Okay. That's all I have.
Okay. Cool.
Do you have any questions for me?
Man.
I've never asked anyone that before.
Yeah, you never have. Well, I guess, what do you think about the album? What do you think?
Oh, I love the album. So I really like it. I've listened to it several times, and I was lucky enough to get an advanced copy of it. And so I've listened to it, and I don't have a real knowledge of soul music. So to me, it's all new.
Yeah.
And there's something nice about not only hearing the soul lyrics
Yeah.
and the instrumentation of the soul music, but also hearing the beats that you've created.
Mm-hmm.
So it is all of it is very new. It was interesting to me how I always wanted to know if if a portion of the lyric was the chorus, or and I think sometimes it was and sometimes it wasn't,
Mm-hmm.
and how and why you chose to isolate certain parts of a lyric as opposed to maybe doing the more obvious, which is using the chorus. And
Yeah.
how often does a producer go straight for the chorus or the hook? And
Yeah.
how often do you find just a phrase that to you, for your purpose, is so much better than, or more purposeful
Right.
than the chorus?
Yeah. I think that's a good question too. I would say that 90% of every sample that you've heard played in a hip hop song has come from the intro to a soul song, or the intro to a funk song, or the intro to a jazz song. It's not super often that producers will pick from the middle of a song. Usually they'll skip around on a record, listen to the intro, see if there's something cool there. Usually the intro is a good place to look for sounds too, because instrumentation isn't too crazy then. For me, I typically like to take from the middle or kind of bridges of songs, so a little bit further in. The singers especially are really into it at that point, because at the beginning, they're kind of like, they're feeling things out, and they're like, they're not really in the song yet. And I really like taking from the bridges and things towards the middle, because at that point the singer's like super into it.
I always have a reaction when, I don't know if you speed it up or just raise it up in terms of like a chipmunk sound, which I'm sure is not the phrase or the way you want it described.
Yeah.
But
that's that's how it is described though. It is described as kind of like making it into a chipmunk sound.
that always works for me as a listener. I'll tell you what doesn't work for me, and you didn't have this in Left Unspoken, but
Okay.
when people talk, like, sometimes
Oh yeah.
you just got to write a postcard.
Mm-hmm. No, it was definitely.
Do you like talking in music?
No, I don't like it either.
Is there a lot of that in soul?
There's so much of that in soul, and there's so many songs that would just be so perfect to take a sample from. But Barry White's talking, and it's just like, why are you doing this to me right now? But yeah, no, that happens so often in soul music. At the beginning of a song, the guy's just talking to his girl, and he's saying all the things he wants to do to her, or all the ways she did him wrong, or vice versa. And it's just, the instrumentation is just like so on point, and you want so bad to be able to use it, but the guy's talking.
Soup, I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Oh, well, thanks for having me.
This is Andrew Paul Cronin, and you've been listening to the Q&A with A.P.C. To hear archived episodes, go to soundcloud.com/QAAPC or subscribe to the show on iTunes. For exclusive content, including upcoming shows, behind-the-scenes pictures, and more, follow the show on Instagram at instagram.com/QAAPC. The executive producer of the Q&A with A.P.C. is Ben Riley.